The tape that watches. It was while boredly searching through the dusty labyrinth of forgotten boxes, hidden behind a trapdoor in his new apartment above a renovated Victorian building in a suburban town, that Elliot came across the VHS tape. 3 weeks ago, he had moved in looking for a new start after a tiresome year. The attic, reached by a trapdoor in his bedroom ceiling, was a dusty maze of forgotten junk and spider webs. He had searched it out because he was bored, hoping to salvage something interesting out of the last tenant's rubbish. That was where he noticed it, nestled between a cracked lamp and a stack of yellowed papers. A black VHS tape labeled, in Sharpie, "Do not view." Curiosity got to him. He had never had a VHS player since he was a kid, yet the warning label seemed like a challenge. The plastic covering of the tape bore scratches, like it had been carelessly handled, and stood out against the dim bulb in the attic. He flipped it over in search of more information, searching for a date, a name, something, but found nothing, just this sharp command. He nervously laughed, shaking off the chill growing up his spine. It was likely a family film from a previous owner or a joke from a previous resident. Nevertheless, "Do not view" stuck in his head, dark and foreboding. He searched through a box full of electronics he had never unpacked. He found, to his amazement, an old VCR he had never seen before, one his mother had made him hold onto when she had downsized years earlier. It was a heavy, clunky thing, a sleek silver machine with buttons that clicked with a harsh clank. He plugged it into his little television, the one with a screen that wobbled if you jostled it. Dust puffed out when he put in the tape, the VCR humming to life with a metallic groan. The screen wavered, then stabilized into a fuzzy image. It was a bedroom. His bedroom. The lighting came from above, from a camera up in the ceiling. He stood glued to it, catching his breath. On screen, he watched himself sleeping, spread out across a blanket, the one he slept in every night. His chest moved up and down slowly, unaware of the eye upon him. The date stamp in the corner was 2 nights ago, 3:17 a.m. His heart thumped. He had never had a camera, much less installed one in his own room. The apartment was rented, and he'd searched every corner when he moved in. There was nothing, no security systems, nothing hidden. The tape kept going, unaltered, just him sleeping, the room quiet except for the low hum of tape. Then a shadow disturbed the edge of the frame, fleeting and indistinct, like a person passing out of view. Elliot stopped it cold, shaking. The screen darkened, but the image of himself exposed and observed seared into his memory. He ejected the tape and examined it once more, hoping it would suddenly give up its secrets. The warning notices on the label took on a menacing quality. Who had made this tape? Why? He thought about calling police, then changed his mind. What would he tell them? That he found a creepy tape? They'd think he was crazy. He locked the tape in a drawer, then triple-checked each window and door in the apartment. Locks were secure, rooms bare. Still, he found himself lying in bed later with a sense of foreboding, staring at the trapdoor leading up to the attic, a dark square in the ceiling that seemed to watch him. Sleep did not come easily. Each groan of the old house startled him, thinking someone, or something, observed him from above. He continually glanced up at the trapdoor, expecting it to creak open. Exhaustion had frayed his nerves by morning, but he was determined to investigate. He made a return to the attic, this time armed with a flashlight. The area was unaltered, dusty boxes, the smashed lamp, the newspaper clippings. No wires, no cameras, nothing to account for the tape. On turning to descend, however, he saw a flash in the corner, a small metal object half hidden in dust. It was a lens, tiny and round, more in keeping with a security camera. His gut roiled. He did not touch it, far too unsettled. Back down in the living area, he sat down on the couch, gazing at the drawer where the tape had been locked. He wanted to destroy it, eliminate it from existence, but a pesky thought kept holding him back. Was there more tape? Was this not the last one? The thought of being observed, evening after evening, by some invisible entity made his skin crawl. He had questions, yet the tape was all he had to provide them. Grudgingly, he determined he would replay it again tomorrow morning, during the day, and see if he had missed something. For now, he wedged the couch up against the door to the bedroom, a poor bulwark against the unknowable. As he finally fell into troubled sleep, a quiet sound came from above, a soft, repetitive scratching, fingernails against wood, from the attic. Elliot hardly slept at all, the sound of scratching from above ringing in his ears. Morning came with the air in the apartment heavy with foreboding. He made coffee with hands shaking, stood staring at the drawer where the VHS tape lay. The words "do not view" taunted him, challenging him to watch once more. He knew he must destroy it, yet he was more driven by curiosity to know what he had seen than by terror. Who had taped him? How? The lens he had discovered in the attic plagued his mind, part of a jigsaw he could not complete. He pulled out the VCR after breakfast, took it to the living room, where the sun cast sunshine through windows in a bid to mute the menace of the tape. He put it in, fast-forwarding through the tape of himself asleep. The clock ticked ahead, marking the same evening, now at 3:45 a.m. The shadow he had seen earlier reappeared, here this time lasting longer. It was vaguely humanoid, standing just beyond the edge of view at a spot near by the camera near the door to the bedroom. Elliot caught his breath. The figure did not step closer, yet its presence seemed intentional, as if it sensed it was being taped. He stopped the tape, his heart pounding. The shadow's shape was too indistinct to discern. Was it a form? A trick of light? He rewound, watched again frame by frame. The shape seemed to move, as if it rocked, but never fully came within frame. Then, something else drew his notice. The trap door in the ceiling, hardly visible in the film, stood ajar. He had not seen it before, yet here it was, a slice of shadow where the panel did not lie flush. His gut went cold. He was sure he had closed it after he moved in. Elliot paused the tape and went back up into the attic once more, holding a flashlight. The trapdoor was shut now, yet yesterday's lens was nowhere to be found. He rummaged through dusty boards, displaced boxes, yet it was gone. A cold chill swept over him. Someone or something had been here. He searched out corners in the attic, with nothing to see but cobwebs and old furniture. Frustrated, he came back downstairs, his thoughts reeling. The tape was all he had, yet watching it seemed to be asking whatever was on it to get closer. He thought about throwing it away, but the idea of somebody else receiving it, of somebody else seeing him so exposed, held him back. He phoned his landlord, a gruff guy named Harold who lived several blocks away. Harold denied having any knowledge of the tape, or even any cameras within the apartment. The former tenant, a recluse who painted, had quit suddenly 6 months prior, leaving behind miscellaneous items. Harold said he would verify through his records but sounded somewhat condescending, as if Elliot was worried over nothing. Frustrated, Elliot went to the local library with the desire to uncover the house's history. The librarian, an elderly woman with a kind gaze, assisted him in digging up records. The house was constructed in 1890, and it had a record of short-term renters. One piece from 1995 spoke about a resident who vanished, leaving behind personal belongings, among them a pack of unmarked VHS tapes. The piece was not revealing, yet it gave a chill to Elliot. He bid goodbye to the librarian and went back home, the tape's weight acquiring more weight in his mind. He remained seated next to the VCR, mentally preparing himself. He replayed the tape from where he had abandoned it. The tape changed to a different night, Last week, at least from the date stamp. Again, it showed him sleeping, yet again with the camera at the same angle. This time, however, the shadow stood closer to his bed. Its appearance remained indistinct, yet seemed to be taller, its edges shimmering like static. The hands of Elliot shook when he hit the stop button. He zoomed in close to the TV, yet again its form remained indistinct, as if refusing to be seen. And then, from the tape, came a sound, a deep, guttural hum, a voice straining to produce words without quite managing. Faint, almost overwhelmed by the tape's hiss, yet enough to give Elliot a prickly feeling. He rewound it, played it back again, cranked up the sound. The hum was there, going up and down, not quite like a human. He shut down the VCR, as if disconnecting from whatever he'd just experienced. He was unable to sleep in the bedroom that night. He occupied the couch, a kitchen knife lying on the coffee table, each light in the apartment blazing. The scratching in the attic came back, louder this time, intentional. It moved in circles above him, like something was pacing. Elliot held onto the knife, looking at the ceiling, wondering if perhaps tape was not a recording, but a summons. Elliot spent the following day in a daze. Images from the tape burned into his memory. The shadow at the bottom of his bed, the rough growl, the scratch from upstairs. It was all fragments of a nightmare he was unable to shake. He kept away from the bedroom, getting work done from the living room, but his laptop screen seemed dull by contrast to the vivid horror on VHS. He clutched at the knife, a minor solace against growing feelings of unease that he was not alone. He phoned a friend, Marcus, who was an hour away. Marcus was hesitant, yet he agreed to visit later that night to view it. Someone else had to witness it, to verify it. In the meantime, he did some searching online for hidden camera capabilities and VHS tapes, yet found nothing more than hazy text sites and conspiracy threads. A reference to haunted tapes, items charged with evil intentions, was made somewhere, yet he scoffed at it. Still, it stayed with him. Marcus came over after dark, his easygoing nature replaced by anxiety at the sight of Elliot's white face and red-rimmed eyes. They were seated on the couch, VCR connected, tape queued up. Elliot cautioned Marcus against the shadow and hum, but words seemed inadequate. He hit play, and the usual footage of his bed came up. Marcus leaned in, squinting at the fuzzy picture of sleeping Elliot. The date indicated last week, 2:49 a.m. The shadow emerged, closer this time, its shape still unclear but definitely there. "That's not correct," Marcus grunted tightly. He jabbed his finger at the screen, where a shadow appeared to darken over the bed, its head cocked back, looking intently at Elliot. The hum began, louder this time, a guttural rumble that had Marcus wincing. He took the remote from Kyle and froze the tape. "That's messed up, dude. You need to eliminate this thing." Elliot concurred, but something held him back. The tape was like a key, a means to know what was going on. Erasing it could eliminate his last hope to know who, or what, was monitoring him. Marcus, disturbed, advocated checking the attic. Equipped with flashlights and the blade, they went up. The attic was how Elliot had abandoned it, yet Marcus saw something he had not seen before, scratches on the bottom of the trapdoor, like marks from claws, far too precise to be chance. They didn't see any cameras, any lenses, anything to account for the tape. Below, Marcus insisted Elliot spend a few days at his place. Elliot declined. He couldn't leave the apartment, not while this tape remained here, not with this scratch following him. Marcus grudgingly bid farewell, saying he'd stop by tomorrow. The apartment closed in once he was alone, walls too close, air too stagnant. He replayed it again, unable to help himself. This one was a different evening, a month prior to this one, even before he had discovered the tape. The camera was at the same angle, but without a shadow. The trapdoor in the ceiling was open, a dark shape in the frame. Something inside moved, a flash, a catch in the eye. The screen erupted into static, then a new image was superimposed over it, Elliot, curled up on his sofa, playing back the tape. It was now, tonight, the clock reading 9:32. He flung down the remote, his blood going cold. He spun around, hoping to see a camera, but he was alone. The image kept going, of him from behind, looking at the television with his head cocked. The hum resumed, louder, coalescing into a word, watch. The tape flew out of the VCR in Elliot's hand, shaking so violently he almost lost it. He shut it into the drawer and locked it, but the word reverberated inside his mind, cold and imperative. He pulled out the TV and VCR, jostling them into a closet. The scratch from the attic became insistent, not limited to nighttime. It had a rhythmic sound, like walking back and forth overhead. Elliot took up the knife and sat down on the couch, gazing at the trapdoor. He couldn't leave yet. The tape had revealed something impossible, something that was aware he was looking. He had to know why. As the stroke of midnight drew near, the scratching ceased. Silence bore down upon him, more overwhelming than sound. Then came a fresh noise, the soft click, a releasing latch. The trap door groaned, grinding open. Elliot clutched at the blade, his heart pounding, while a slice of black expanded above. The open trapdoor was a black rectangle in the ceiling, and Elliot's universe contracted to this one spot. The knife clutched in his hand seemed useless, its blade shaking with his pulse. He longed to move, to get out of the apartment, but his feet would not budge. The air was crushing, punctured by ragged breaths. He looked into the blackness of the attic, hoping something would appear, a figure, a face, something to account for the tape. Nothing appeared, but cold air pushed from the attic as if it were exhaling. He struggled to get up, holding onto the knife, and moved toward the ladder. All his instincts told him to get away, but he had to know. The tape had been a preview of himself, a loop of footage contradicting reason. The answers were somewhere, they had to be up above. He went up, each step groaning beneath his weight, the beam of the flashlight trembling in his hand. At the top, he paused, then jabbed the light up into the attic. It was empty, as it had been before, boxes, cobwebs, a scent of dust. The scratches on the trap door were more pronounced, deeper now, as if gouged out with purpose. He swept the flash across the floor, catching something he had not seen before, a second VHS tape, a duplicate of the one he had found, labeled Do Not View. His throat constricted. He was certain he had searched every inch, and he had not seen it before. It was in full view, as if for him to see. He took it, hands slippery with perspiration, and went down, slamming shut the trapdoor. In the living room he locked the second tape along with the first in the drawer. He thought about burning them up, breaking them up with a hammer, but the word from the tape, watch, began to resound in his head. It sounded like a directive, not a recommendation. He paced, trying to think it through. Perhaps the tapes were a joke, a clever setup by the former tenant. But footage of himself playing the tape, open trapdoor, voice. It was too deliberate, too unfeasible. He called Marcus back, his shaking voice telling him about the second tape and the open trapdoor. Marcus begged him to get out, to stay at his house, but Elliot would not. He did not know why, but going out seemed to be giving in to whatever was behind this. Marcus agreed to meet with him at daybreak with a sealant to close up the trapdoor. For now, Elliot was alone. He stayed away from the bedroom, bedding down on the couch with the blade next to him. Sleep was out of the question. The quiet was cacophonous, the building itself alive with tiny noises, a groan, a sigh of air, a soft knock from upstairs. At 3 a.m. he'd get it again, the scratch, measured, going round and round the attic. He clutched the blade, looking at the trapdoor, shut but not any safer. Marcus came by morning, armed with a toolbox and a concerned look. They nailed down the trapdoor, hammering boards over it until it was closed. Marcus sat with Elliot to watch the second tape, a tape where once more Elliot slept, the shadow closer yet, its shape almost distinct. The hum was louder now, fragmenting into words, "Watch." Marcus went white, refusing to call police, but Elliot did not want to. The tapes were genuine, but not where they came from. While Marcus had gone, Elliot was alone with the two tapes, their labels staring at him. He knew he had to stop, yet he felt unable to do so, as if a hook had been planted in his mind. He plugged in the VCR again and slid in the second tape. The tape contained a night 2 weeks prior, the camera angle not changed. The shadow hovered at his bedside, leaning over him, its face a whirlpool of static. The hum became a chant, a stream of unrecognizable syllables that caused a headache. The footage then cut to him on this couch, at this moment in time, viewing this tape. He screamed, tearing out the tape. The television crackled, then showed static, although the VCR remained empty. Within the static, a form coalesced, a face, misshapen, eyes exaggeratedly large, mouth a snapping line. It spoke in a whisper, "Watch," before going black. Elliot took a few steps back, toppling over the coffee table. The scraping resumed, this time not from above, not from within the attic, but from within walls, everywhere. He took both tapes and hurried to the kitchen, forcing them into a trash bag. He would incinerate them, be done. As he wrapped up the bag, though, a new noise emerged, a deliberate, slow knock from beneath the trapdoor, even with the spikes keeping it closed. Elliot stood paralyzed in the kitchen, clenching in one hand the trash bag containing the tapes. The pounding from behind the trapdoor increased, each throb vibrating through the apartment. The nails he and Marcus had driven in were supposed to hold, yet he knew by sound alone, something was trying to get out. He released the bag, tapes clattering within, and clutched the knife. His chest heaved, his eyes focused solely on the ceiling above. The pounding ceased, to be replaced by a woody, scraping groan, a sound like the trapdoor was being pushed open. He sprinted into the living room, looking up. The boards were still in one piece, but the trapdoor was shaking, dust falling. He took a step back, knife aloft, thinking frantically. The tapes, the shadow, the voice, they were linked to the attic, to whatever occupied it. He had to get rid of the tapes, stop the cycle. He grabbed the bag and raced to the backyard, where a little-used fire pit stood. His hands trembled while he splashed lighter fluid over the tapes, the label "Do not view stark in moonlit light." He struck a match, but before he had a chance to drop it, he was halted by a noise, a voice, cold and distinct, from within the house. "Watch." It was the voice from the tapes, yet now it was here, in his apartment. He let fall the unlit match, jolted, and fled back inside, slamming shut the door. The living room was unoccupied, yet the TV was on, showing static. The VCR, remaining plugged in, hummed to life. The screen flickered, depicting his bed, now with a current timestamp. His blood froze. The screen had depicted him sleeping, yet he was here, standing. The shadow stood at the bedpost, its form more distinct now, high, gaunt, with limbs far too long, its face a blur of static. It spun, catching sight of him over the screen, and the voice spoke once more, "Watch." The screen flipped to the living room, where he now stood, holding the knife, fixated upon the television. It was live and possible, a broadcast from a camera he knew did not exist. He bashed the television with a lamp, breaking glass everywhere on the floor. The VCR continued to whine, its sound building, a laugh. He pulled its cord out of the wall, yet the sound went on. The scraping came back, From not the attic this time, from everywhere, walls, floor, ceiling. The apartment seemed to be alive, watching him. He charged toward the front door, but it would not move, the lock stuck. The windows would not open, their latches frozen. Knocking came again, this time from beneath the trapdoor, boards snapping. Elliot screamed out for assistance, yet the street beyond was quiet. He frantically pulled out the tapes from the bag, hoping to stop it. He tore them into pieces, shredding at the magnetic tape, yet pieces squirmed in his hands, alive. The voice cackled, a guttural laugh filling the air. The trapdoor creaked open, boards snapping apart, and black spilled out, thick, heavy, like oil. Elliot backed away, the knife a useless thing. The shadow stepped out, not from downstairs but from out of the air itself, its form fluidly shifting from human to something else. Its eyes, also a little too large, emitted a soft, otherworldly glow, focusing on his. Watch, it spoke in his mind. He attempted to flee, but his legs collapsed beneath him, and he collapsed, the knife clattering across the ground. The shadow towered over him, its presence crushing, and vision blurred. He woke up in bed, the room black. The trap door had been closed, boards removed. The VCR and television were in the corner, unharmed. The tapes were returned to the drawer, unscathed, labels unblemished. He looked at the clock, 3:17 a.m., the same as the time stamp on the first tape. His body throbbed, like he'd been sprinting for hours. He made it to the drawer, shaking hands, and removed the tapes. They were tangible, solid, taunting. He replayed the tape for a second time, unable to help himself. It was still him sleeping, but this time without any shadow. This time, however, the camera moved up to the open trapdoor, eyes looking down, his eyes, wide with fear, staring at himself. The hum continued once more, building into a statement, "You are the tape." The screen itself faded black, and the apartment went silent. He remains in the apartment, however, even though he doesn't rest. The tapes are there, and he sits, night after night, viewing himself at angles he shouldn't be able to see. The scratching never ceases, and the shadow lurks behind, out of view. He can't escape, can't destroy tapes. They are a part of him now, and he a part of them, forever observed, forever observing. The hollow guest. Emily had first sensed Luna's odd behavior one rainy Tuesday evening. The weathered old farmhouse stood at the edge of a sagging cornfield, creaking beneath the weight of storm. She lay on the couch, a book open in her lap, words blurring as her eyes grew heavy. Luna, her border collie, curled at her feet, black and white coat heaving up and down with each breath. Rain against windows was the only noise, a constant beat that lulled Emily into a nap. Then Luna's head jerked up. A low growl issued from her dog's throat, her ears back. Her eyes locked onto a far corner of the living room. Emily tracked her gaze, squinting into shadows. The corner was deserted, nothing more than a spot where peeling wall covering met scuffed boards where lamplight struggled to penetrate. Nothing stirred, nothing moved, yet Luna's growl became more pronounced, her hackles standing up like a roughened line along her back. "Luna, girl, what's wrong?" Emily spoke in a soft, coaxing tone, her voice shaking slightly. She placed her book aside and leaned toward Luna, her naked feet tapping against the chilly floor. The dog didn't respond, her eyes fixed. Emily rose from her seat, her shadow on the wall long and distorted in the dimming light cast by the lamp. She moved toward the corner, her heart pounding louder than the rain. There was nothing. Only a shadowy trace of a spiderweb and a whiff of dampened wood. She knelt down next to Luna, petting her, yet the dog's body remained tense, her steady gaze fixed upon nothing. "You're being foolish," Emily muttered to herself, rather than Luna. She pulled at Luna's collar, coaxing her toward the kitchen. Luna planted her paws upon the floor, refusing to budge until Emily quit. Emily woke up in bed, her ears straining against the storm outside. The farmhouse was ancient, full of eccentricity, creaks in the boards, drafts through gaps in windows, but it had never seemed sinister before. She heeded the rain, her mind attempting to dismiss the flimsy scratch noise from downstairs, a sound akin to claws against wood. Luna must be chasing a nightmare, she reassured herself. Still, slumber came slowly, and when it did, it was beset with visions of a corner not unoccupied, with eyes gazing from shadows. The rain had ceased by morning, filling the air with the damp smell of earth. Emily opened her door to see Luna in the corner, gazing at it. The dog had not moved at night, her food bowl unblemished. Emily's gut was knotted as she crouched next to her. "What's wrong with you?" she whispered, her hand tracing along the dog's taut muscles. Luna's eyes darted in her direction briefly, back to the corner. Emily chose to distract herself by doing chores. She swept the floors, dusted out the shelves, and did not look at the corner. Every time she walked by the living room, however, Luna was sitting there, her growl a hum in the background. By afternoon, Emily was jumpy. She called her brother, Mark, who lived 1 hour away in town. "Luna's being odd." She tried to sound nonchalant. "Staring at nothing. Growling. Do you think she's ill?" Mark barked out a laugh, his voice cracking over the phone. "You think she's chasing phantoms? Old houses like yours? I'm sure it's got stories to tell. Get her to the vet if you're concerned." Emily tried to laugh along with him, but after she hung up, she felt more isolated than ever. The farmhouse was so quiet, silence crushing against her ears. That night, after the sun had fallen below the horizon, creating long shadows through the windows, Luna's demeanor changed. Emily was doing dishes when the growl suddenly changed to a sharp, panicked bark. She spilled a plate, the ceramic crunching on the tiles, and sprinted toward the living area. Luna was in the middle of the room, teeth exposed, barking at the wall where Emily cast her shadow. The shadow was long, swaying from side to side as the bathroom light danced. Emily stopped in her tracks, her breath held. Nothing else was in the house, no movement, no noise apart from Luna's barking. "Luna, stop it," Emily said more sharply than she had meant to. She took a step closer, her shadow advancing with her, and Luna barked louder, more frantically. The dog charged at the wall, snapping at nothing where her shadow's head would be. Emily's skin crawled, a cold perspiration breaking out at her neck. She reached out to grab Luna's collar, hauling her back, but Luna struggled, her claws scrabbling at the floor. "It's only my shadow," Emily whispered, her voice trembling. She pulled Luna toward the back door and shoved her out, shutting it hastily. The dog barks resounded throughout the lawn, but Emily wouldn't risk a glance at the wall. She flipped out the kitchen light, leaving the house dark, and stood, her heart thudding. The house seemed so large, so empty, yet far from empty. Emily locked her bedroom door, a habit she had never had in the 6 months she'd lived in the farmhouse. Luna whined outside, her crying low yet insistent. Emily herself lay awake, gazing up at her ceiling, trying to tell herself it was nothing. Dogs are spooked. Old houses creak. But when she closed her eyes, she couldn't get the sense out of her head that something was observing her, not from the corner, but at the fringes of her own shadow. Emily awoke to silence, a held breath kind. The storm had dissipated, leaving a gray morning seeping through the bed curtains. She remained motionless, straining to listen for Luna's whines, but nothing. Her chest constricted upon recalling the night before, Luna yapping at her shadow, her growls sharp with desperation. Emily shut down this memory and brought herself out from bed, her naked feet cold against the boards. Below, Luna stood at the back door, her nose against the window, her eyes wide but not growling anymore. Emily unlocked it, letting her in, and the dog sprang inside, smelling at the air as if looking for something. "You're okay now, huh?" Emily said, crouching to scratch Luna's ears. The dog's tail wagged, but her eyes shifted to the corner of the living room, then came back to Emily. The day went by quietly, although Emily stayed away from the living room. She kept herself occupied at work, replying to emails by the kitchen table, yet her eyes wandered to the door. The corner behind was out of sight, yet she sensed it, a presence weighing upon the house. At lunchtime, she couldn't resist any more. She took a flashlight in hand and strode into the living room, determined to show herself there was nothing. The corner remained unchanged, peeling walls, a slight crack in the plaster, nothing more. She lit the corner up with her flashlight, half hoping to catch something darting out from it, but dust motes were all her beam illuminated. Luna observed from across the couch, her head cocked, her ears up. "See?" Emily called out, her voice resonant in the silence. "Nothing." Turning away, however, her beam illuminated the edge of the old mirror which hung upon the wall across from her. The mirror was old, its frame chipped, tarnished, a holdover from previous owners. Emily never glanced at it. Its surface was cloudy, distorting her image into something almost unrecognizable. Now, however, when the beam from her flashlight danced across it, she saw something that took her breath. Her own image was there, yet it wasn't right. Its edges wavered, like hot air boiling up from hot asphalt, and for a moment, it seemed to move before she did. She took a step closer, her heart pounding. The image steadied, her own face, pale, with startled eyes, her brown hair unkempt from sleeping. But when she lifted her hand to touch the mirror, her image's hand lingered a fraction of a second behind, hesitant to move. Emily drew back her hand, her pulse pounding. "It's just the glass," she said. "It's old, warped." She spun away, but a low growl from Luna made her stop. The dog was looking at the mirror, her muscles taut, her lips drawn back. Emily pushed herself out of the room, pulling Luna along behind her. She shut the living room door, a step she'd never taken before, and stood leaning against it, her hands shaking. It was too quiet in the house, a silence so powerful it seemed to magnify creaks, movements. She attempted to turn her attention to dinner, her shaking hands cutting up vegetables, but her thoughts returned to the mirror, to the corner, to Luna's unrelenting gaze. Emily stayed out of the living room that evening. She kept Luna inside in the kitchen, closed the back door, and went to bed. Sleep would not come, however. With her eyes closed, she kept reliving the distorted mirror image, her shadow long and thin. At midnight she became aware of it, a soft shuffle, a sound of feet walking across the creaking boards downstairs. Luna, lying at the bottom of the bed, stood up, ears alert. Emily took a breath, listening. The noise came again, slowly and purposefully, from the kitchen towards the living room. She slid out from under the covers, her feet soundless on the carpet, and padded toward the door. Luna padded behind her, clicking her nails. Emily slowly opened the door a little more, looking out into the darkened hall. The house was quiet, yet the air seemed heavy, expectant. She took a flashlight from the nightstand and padded downstairs, Luna at her side. The door to the living room was still shut, yet the sound behind it was growing closer, a rhythmic, unrelenting shuffle, like a person pacing. Emily's hand hovered over the doorknob, her skin tingling. She did not want to open it, did not want to know what was behind it, but Luna's growl prodded her. Emily turned the doorknob and pushed open the door. The space was vacant, the corner obscured by shadow. The mirror reflected the beam from the flashlight, sending it back in a pale, unhealthy glow. Emily entered, her breath quick, and swept from wall to wall. Nothing. But turning back out, she saw a glimpse in the mirror, a presence, not her own, standing behind her. It was tall, formless, a blot of shadow that was gone when she spun back. Luna barked frantically, a sharp sound, her eyes staring at the mirror. Emily retreated backward, her pounding heart, and shut the door. She didn't rest that night, seated on her bed with Luna wrapped against her, holding her flashlight. The shuffle ceased, yet the quiet was more terrible, heavy with the feeling that something lingered, out of sight. By day 3, Emily was unable to brush aside the oddness of the house. The corner, the mirror, the shambling steps, they stuck with her like wet mist. Luna's attitude worsened. The dog would not stay in the living room, hovering at the threshold with her tail tucked in, her eyes switching between the corner and Emily's shadow. Emily attempted to call Mark once more, but her phone reception was poor, the little bars strengthening and then fading. She did leave a voicemail, her tone strained. "There's something wrong with the house. Luna's going crazy. Call me back." She cleaned in the morning, hoping this ritual would earth her. All her tasks felt unnatural. The broom was heavier, air thicker. When she wiped the kitchen tabletop, her shadow fell across it, longer than usual, despite morning sunbeams pouring through the window. She stood, staring. The shadow's edges quivered, as if they were unraveling, while its head bent for a moment when she hadn't. Emily backed away, gasped for breath. Luna, curled up by the back door, whimpered quietly, her gaze locked onto the shadow. "It's just the light," Emily managed, her voice breaking. She closed the curtains, darkening the kitchen to a soft glow, yet the shadow was still there, cast from the impenetrable light leaking through the cloth. She took a step to the sink, and the shadow moved slowly behind, too slowly, as though not wanting to keep up. Needing distraction, Emily walked Luna through the cornfield. The cornstalks bent in the wind, creaking a sweet sound after the heavy silence of the house. Luna padded ahead, her head down, but she kept checking back with Emily, her eyes uncertain. Emily struggled to dispel her uneasiness, paying attention to the sound of dirt crunching beneath her boots, the scent of moist earth. When she looked down, however, her shadow felt wrong once more, too tall, too gaunt, its edges spread out like ink spreading in water. Back at home, Emily kept out of sight of the living room and mirror. She sat at her bedside, typing out emails at her laptop, but the screen jittered, words twisting for a moment before reforming. She criticized the dodgy wiring, country internet, but her hands were shaking as she typed. Luna rested at her feet, her breathing ragged, her eyes frantically flitting towards the bedroom door. As night drew near, the house became chilly, a heavy metal tang filling the air Emily couldn't identify. She kindled a fire in the living area, hoping its warmth would shake out the fear, but Luna would not approach. The dog remained in the kitchen, her whimpers almost inaudible above the snapping fire. Emily stayed on the sofa, her gaze averted from the corner, from the mirror, from her shadow cast upon the wall. And then she noticed it. Her shadow, illuminated by the fire, moved independently. She did not move, her hands clenched firm upon the couch, yet the shadow's arm rose, its fingers curling into a beckoning. Emily's breath was arrested, her body locked. The shadow's head rotated, its form growing more distinct, its eyes looking back at her, hollow, glittering eyes. She sprang to her feet, her movement stiff, and her shadow snapped back into form, a perfect replica. Luna's whines were replaced by barks, short and panicked, from the kitchen. Emily rushed over to her, closing the living room door behind her. The dog was fixed intently upon a spot on the wall, her teeth exposed, her body shaking. Emily looked where she was looking, but nothing was there, simply a smooth white wall, her shadow cast upon it. Luna, stop, Emily said quietly, her breath hardly audible. She reached out to grab Luna's collar, pulling her towards the stairs, but Luna would not budge, her barks resounding throughout the house. Emily's shadow wavered once more, its edges distorting, and she thought she saw it move once more, a discreet movement unconnected to her own. She pulled Luna upstairs and locked them both in the bedroom. Later in the evening, the shuffled steps came again, this time louder, going round the living area downstairs. Emily gripped Luna, her own heart thudding so violently it was painful. The growls never ceased from the dog, her eyes glued to her bedroom door. Emily did not even open it, did not even glance. She lit up every bulb in the room, yet shadows appeared darker, heavier, collecting in corners like liquid. At 2 a.m, the footsteps ceased, a silence taking their place, then a new noise, a soft whisper, a sound of wind through dry leaves, filtered through from the other side of the door. Emily leaned in, listening intently, yet not a word, only a rhythmic hiss growing closer, then again fading. Luna's growls became whimpers, her body tucked against Emily's. The whisper ceased, yet a heavier, more ominous silence took its place, redolent with something holding back. Emily didn't sleep. She was sitting on her bed, a hand holding a flashlight, holding Luna's collar in the other, gazing at the door. Her shadow, cast by her bedside lamp, appeared to observe her, its lines too sharp, too frozen. She didn't gaze at it for long, fearing to see something if she did. Emily would not remain locked up in the bedroom forever. In the morning, her eyes felt dry from not having slept, her body tired from tension. Luna lay beside her, her breathing quiet, her eyes never leaving the door. The house remained quiet, though it was not a quiet that came with peace. It was a quiet that came with something holding its breath, expecting her to get up. She struggled to rise, her legs wobbly. The corridor was dark, the air chillier than it would have been. Luna trailed after her tail slumped, her ears flapping at every noise. In the downstairs, the living room door remained shut, but Emily sensed the corner's presence, a beat permeating throughout the house. She skirted it, going into the kitchen to make coffee, her hands shaking while she loaded the pot. The day weighed heavier with each passing hour. Emily attempted to phone Mark once more, her phone refusing to pick up any signal, flashing with static. She tested the router, the cables, but found nothing wrong. The solitude of the farmhouse, once a respite from it all, had now transformed into a cage. She thought about going into town, but her mind recoiled at leaving Luna behind, or driving her out into the cornfield, where her shadow had felt so out of place. By mid-afternoon, disturbances became more brazen. Emily was hand-washing dishes when the faucet spluttered, the water growing cloudy for a moment before clearing. She clattered a glass to the counter, the sound making Luna flinch. The dog's eyes snapped to the kitchen door, where Emily's shadow stood, its edge more distinct than it would have been in this hazy light. Emily took a step back, and her shadow lingered behind, its head angling slightly before snapping into line. She had to get out of the kitchen. She took Luna with her out to the porch, the air outside cool but not crushing. The cornfield beyond spread out before her, the cornstalks bending in a wind she couldn't sense. Luna moved restlessly, her nose flaring, her eyes darting to Emily's shadow on the porch boards. Emily leaned back on the steps, her back to the house, attempting to catch her breath. And even here, the shadow was wrong, its lines too sharp, like it had been cut from a solid thing. Emily boarded up her living room that night. She had found weathered boards in the shed, splintered along the edges, and pulled them inside. Luna stood in the kitchen, her low whines a hum. Emily hammered the boards across the living room door, each hit reverberating through the house. The mirror was still in there, the corner, although enclosing them seemed a minor triumph. She didn't glance at her shadow while she hammered, not wanting to see what it would do. Dark descended, and the house became cold, air full of that metallic taste. Emily was in the kitchen, Luna by her feet, a flashlight beside her. The power wavered, the lights going low before recovering. Every flash made her shadow dance, its movements far too fluid, far too intentional. She extinguished the kitchen lamp, using the flashlight, but the beams seemed dimmer, its light eaten by shadows. And then came the footsteps again, although this time not from the living room, but from upstairs. Slow, measured, they came from down the hall, stopping at the top of the stairs. Luna's ears folded back, her body shaking. Emily white-knuckled the flashlight and stood, her eyes fixed upon the stairs. The steps came down, each one louder, closer, until they stopped just out of view. Emily stood frozen, her breathing short, yet nothing emerged. Luna's growls dominated the space, her gaze upon the vacant staircase. The whisper came a second time, that dry rush of leaves, closer this time, rapping at the periphery of the space. Emily swept the beam of the flashlight, its light piercing through the dark, yet nothing, only her shadow, stretching upon the wall, its head cocked at a level she had not met. She darted up to her room, Luna behind her, and locked herself in. The footsteps came after her, more slowly this time, making a loop of the hall outside. Emily barricaded herself behind the dresser, shaking so hard she struggled to hold on to it. Luna leaned against her, whining, her eyes reaching for the walls. Emily flipped on every light in the room, yet the shadows seemed to grow more substantial, filling in where the light would have spilled. It came back, louder, clearer, yet wordless. It seemed to reverberate from walls, from floor, from ceiling, everywhere around her. Emily clutched Luna tight, her heart galloping, her mind leaping for explanations, hallucinations, gas leaks, something reasonable. But air was too thick, shadows wrong. She glanced at her own, cast from beside her bedside lamp, and saw it move once more, a twisting motion, slow, deliberate, as if it was turning toward her. She screamed, her voice ragged and desperate, and the whisper ceased. The footsteps receded, leaving behind nothing but silence. But Emily knew it wasn't. Whatever it was, it lingered in the corners, in shadows, in spaces beyond her sight. She didn't move, didn't sleep, simply remained seated with Luna, holding out for morning, hoping it would see her through. Dawn did not arrive. The farmhouse was lit by gray morning, yet the air was heavier, the shadows more pronounced. Emily had not slept, her eyes red-rimmed, her body throbbing from having lain with her back straight throughout the night. Luna was beside her, her breathing ragged, her eyes glued to the door of her bedroom. The dresser stood against the wall, unscathed, yet Emily had a sense that something had attempted to intrude. She had to get out. The idea had been building since the steps, the hushed voice, the shadow not her own. She picked up her phone, still nothing, and packed her belongings, keys, clothes, Luna's leash. She avoided the corners, did not even glance at the walls where her shadow would lie. She pushed the dresser, her back aching, and threw open the bed door. The hall was vacant, but cold air clung to her skin, the acrid scent heavier. Below, downstairs, the kitchen was quiet, the boarded-up living room door a cold reminder of last night. Emily attached the loop to Luna's collar, the dog shaking but compliant. She opened the back door, her foot on the porch, and stood. The cornfield lay quiet, its stalks motionless despite breeze visual. Her shadow fell darkly from her onto the porch, its lines sharp, far too sharp, and for a moment it seemed to move, its arm extending out before retracting. Emily's breath stilled, her hold on the leash growing tighter. She yanked Luna toward the vehicle, parked near the shed, her movements brisk. The shadow lengthened behind her, its movements far too fluid, far too intentional. She didn't glance back at it, didn't need to. She hurled her bag into the back seat, yanked open the door for Luna, then slipped inside. The motor growled to life, and she accelerated down the dirt road, the farmhouse growing smaller in the rearview mirror. But the shadow remained, cast by the morning sun onto the passenger seat. It shifted again, its head turning while hers didn't, its curled-up fingers extending towards her. Emily's pulses quickened, her hands trembling over the steering wheel. She kept her eyes fixed ahead, upon the cornfield passing by in a green blur, yet the shadow's presence was a burden, a force she was unable to shake. In town, she pulled over at a diner, its parking lot ablaze with sun. Luna continued in the car, her nose against the window, her eyes suspicious. Emily called Mark at a payphone, shaking, recounting it all, the corner, the mirror, shadow. He did not laugh this time, his silence weighty. "Stay where you are," he said. "I'm coming." But even in the diner, among people, the shadow was unnatural. It spread out across the floor, its edges distorting, its shape too tall, too gaunt. A waitress went by, and Emily's shadow appeared to jerk, its arm convulsing before falling back into place. No one else seemed to notice, laughing and chatting in a jarringly sharp contrast to the horror twisting within her. Mark came an hour later, white-faced, listening to her tale. He took her to his apartment, Luna curled behind her in the back seat. The shadow, however, stayed with her, cast upon walls, upon floor, ever following a little too late, a little too deliberate. Emily ceased looking at it, ceased speaking, her mind unraveling beneath weight of something she was unable to articulate. At Mark's, she barricaded herself inside the guest room, Luna beside her. The shadows loomed everywhere, along the ceiling, against walls, across floors. They each seemed to be alive, observing, anticipating. She pulled down the curtains, flipped every switch, but they lingered, sharpening at corners when she averted her eyes. Luna growled low, her gaze flitting toward corners, toward walls, toward nothing. Those whispers came back again, soft yet unmistakable, weaving through the walls of Mark's living room. Emily gripped Luna close, her breathing labored, her frame shaking. The shadows danced, not hers alone any more, but others, silhouettes cast by nothing within the room, slithering across walls like fluid. She did not scream, did not shift, simply held Luna and looked at the door, expecting something to walk through. By morning, Emily didn't know what was real. The shadows, the whispers, the footsteps, they accompanied her, no longer connected to the farmhouse. Luna growled incessantly, her eyes fixed on things Emily couldn't see. A doctor, a priest, Mark suggested, but Emily knew it wasn't in her mind, not something holy water could cure. The hollow guest, whatever it was, had taken her, its presence entrenched in her shadow, her reflection, her existence. She never returned to the farmhouse. She couldn't. But walking through the town, shadows tracked her, one step behind, ever present in her peripheral vision. And occasionally, in times of silence, it grew within her, a presence, not in the corner so much, but within her, hollowing, endless, waiting for her to glance.